Assalamualaikum and hi. My name is Nur Shuhaida binti Samad. My metric number is 273303. Now I will present about Islamic accounting issue which title Critical Muslim Intellectual Discourse and the Issue of Interest Riba Implication for Islamic Accounting and Banking. This article analyzes how CMI ideas have been displaced from mainstream Islamic accounting and banking literature and practices, and how this has hindered the development of meaningful, innovative, and critical discourse on the riba problem in Islamic accounting and banking in general. Modern Islamic banks and financial organizations will go to the great length to create products that appear traditional Islamic goods, such as profit loss sharing contracts and the avoidance of interest, especially in formal form. This CMI is a movement led by a group of Muslim academics with the goal of revitalizing Islamic thought. This group of scholars advocates a renewal effort based on understanding the historical foundation of the Quran and Islamic legacy when reading the Quran and extending its meaning to the present day. Okay, let's go to the first issue. The issue of riba in contemporary traditional thought. The main controversy is related to different interpretation of the Quranic injunction in relation to riba, where have different interpretation meaning of riba. There are three approaches explained about the ulama position regarding to the meaning of riba. The first one, the idealist approach. It is restrict Islamic banking to the contract permitted by classical Islamic law and consider bank interest as a grave sin. Second, the pragmatic approach. Consider bank interest to be illegal. It strives to avoid it in creative and sometimes unconventional way. Third, the liberal approach emphasizes that modern bank interest does not correspond to pre-Islamic riba and is not inherently evil. The majority of contemporary Muslim scholars take an idealist approach, which is equating bank interest with riba. One of the most influential scholars, Mufti Muhammad Taqi Usmani, has fiercely criticized and dismissed various fatwa. He clearly forbid all type of interest, and others influential leaders also argue that no doubt that interest is equivalent to riba. Next, the issue of riba and the Islamic banking industry. The problem of riba has become a fiqh, which is understanding of Islamic law, as well as a religious identity issue for many Muslims. Despite the initial desire to develop an independent Islamic finance and economics, the field has failed to escape the centripetal pull of Western economic thoughts and has in many ways has been caught in the intellectual web of the very system it set out to replace, according to the issue in Islamic banking, economic and finance. Although the majority of contemporary traditionalist ulama pretend to follow their injunction and opinions, it shows that the idealist perspective of interest has weakened as a result of a number of factors, including the banking industry treatment of riba and interest as a legal concept rather than an economic concept. The industry began developing sale products and contract with markup based on the London Interbank Offer Rate. Many idealist Islamic banking theorists have criticized the Islamic banking industry for replacing the interest-based system with the markup system, claiming that the markup system is not an alternative. Next is issue of riba in contemporary Islamic accounting and banking literature. Islamic banking and economics are primarily influenced by socio-political consideration, with Muslims separating themselves from Jews and Christians. The Islamic interest-free banking system is claimed to be not only possible but also potentially superior to the standard interest-based banking system. In Islamic economics and finance literature, the prohibition of interest is frequently given priority over other considerations such as socio-economic fairness and sustainability development. For example, belief that interest is treated as exploitation and injustice in both the Quran and the Sunnah. The Sharia definitely prohibits riba, which is officially translated as usury, but is widely interpreted as the ban of charging any interest on any loan. Abdul Makid declares that Islamic banks operate with two fundamental principles. The first one is the complete elimination of interest in any form from the banking system. Second, the use of several forms of profit and loss sharing plan as the backbone of Islamic banking transaction. Now, CMI thoughts and Islamic law, which is Sharia. In many Muslim countries, Sharia law regulates some or all element of people's life, including financial. Their criticism of traditional ulama as a sole basis has argued that in order to address deeper concerns such as the meaning of justice, an equal or even greater emphasis on theology is required. For example, the notion of justice cannot be defined just by reference to the Quran, because humanity is a concept of justice. The objective of CMI is to revive religious conception and keep them alive as valid responses to the problem of postmodernity. So there is no need to suffer modernity. CMI rejects Islamic calls and attempt to establish Sharia law, claiming that Islamic who claim that Sharia is unchangeable and that its application was practices in early Islam are isolating Muslim, preventing socio-economic change in Muslim society and exploiting this debate for political advantage. Another issue is lack of understanding of the historical, political and social context. Traditional and conservative ulama oppose changes to Sharia and claiming that it fit all of the demands and requirements of modern Islamic culture, while also devising means to avoid its application, such as Islamic banking. It is because the ulama only source of authoritative power is the Sharia. The traditional fiqh refer to the actual laws and teaching found in the Quran as well as the Prophet Muhammad traditions, which are used to guide Muslims in their daily life. Despite its careful exposition, traditional fiqh contains many deductions and interference and will never be sufficient for the needs of Islamic mission. Okay, the last one is CMI and Rahman methodology. Implication for the riba and bank interest debate in accounting and banking. First, rationale behind the prohibition of riba in 6th century Arabia. In form of riba of pre-Islamic Arabia, the deferred credit practices related to when creditor increased the outstanding debt for delays in settlement by the borrower. Doubling and redoubling of the loan concluded by Rahman from Quran verses on riba is: first, the riba of the pre-Islamic days was a system whereby the principal sum was double and redoubled through a usurious process. Second, because of this process of doubling the principal, the Quran refused to admit that riba was kind of a fair business transaction. Third, while permitting the commercial profit, the Quran encouraged the spirit of cooperation as opposed to that profiteering. Second implication is implication for today's banking system and bank interest. Society should first embark on addressing economic and social dealing with the issue of riba with the very high degree of universality related to the social justice embodied in Islamic legislation. The inability of the ulama to interpret issue on the interest bank need to realize that the credit sale in today's environment enhance the demand for the good in the real sector of the economy, as it is a contingent on the elasticity of demand of an asset being sold. The failure of traditional ulama to develop economic rationale related to prohibited riba is significantly influence more serious and urgent effort towards social equity and justice. The last implication is implication for Islamic accounting. Approaches to Sharia rulings in Islamic accounting should move away from fatwa approach, which is what is lawful and unlawful, and use new fiqh. As we know, new fiqh is allow Muslim researcher to be free from restriction and provide accounting researcher with useful methodological tools to build a standard. In order to achieve justice and equitable society, Islamic accounting need to be responsible for social inequity and injustice than the charging of the banking interest. As a conclusion, the opinion of CMI were used to explore the topic of riba and bank interest in Islam. In the accounting literature, this article brought critical debates to the historically established and authoritative traditionalist perspective on the topic of riba, while interest and riba has never been a central point of contention for CMI. As it has been for juristic and contemporary traditionalists, their thoughts and methodological aid in discussing the riba issue in a broader framework aimed at constructing a contemporary interpretation of Quranic verses that addresses the issue of bank interest. This article adds to the body of literature in Islamic economics, finance and accounting, which aim at providing contemporary proposal toward a contemporary understanding of bank interest in a global economy. That's all for my presentation. Thank you.